Welcome all to BFantasyFootball Podcast. I'm your host Derek, and this is my co-host and my brother Marcel. Today we'll be previewing part 1 for the week 15, so we'll go over about 6 games and what we think might happen. Of course, we're going to start off with the Thursday night game since that's starting off in a few hours from now. Of course, we have the Kansas City Chiefs at the Los Angeles Chargers. It is about a 3-point spread and a 53.5 over/under. So that would be an implied point total of 29 to 25 or somewhere in that ballpark for the Chiefs. Now, remember, this is a big AFC West divisional game. This is going to be a tough matchup, and it's going to be a really fun game to watch, of course. Everyone's excited. It's probably the game of the week if everything goes well. So looking on both sides of the ball, of course, Patrick Mahomes, you're going to want to start anyway, because this is, an over-under of like 53.5, so that's one of the bigger ones, or the only one, I think, over 50 in the entire week. After that, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he should do pretty well against this Chargers defense. They have letting some holes go through for running backs. And then Darrell Williams could even be a what-the-heck flex. Chuck him in there. Tyreek Hill, you're starting, there's no question. Travis Kelce, he's another one I actually really like against the Chargers this week because he does usually get the Chargers number. I find he's really good against them. And the Chiefs defense, I probably wouldn't want to touch them. They have been doing pretty good, and they have been winning the games for them over the last 5-6 weeks. But after that, I'm not sure if I want to play them against Justin Herbert and his friends. Justin Herbert, I also have in the top 5 for QB this week. Austin Eckler, I do think he can do pretty well. I have him in the top 10. Keenan Allen's back from COVID protocol and all that, so you're going to start him. Mike Williams, you're starting as well. And Jared Cook if you're desperate at tight end. What do you see, Mars?
Yeah, no, those are all very good points you brought up. Austin Eckler, I know he's had that ankle injury, but to me, he's a full go, especially with Chris Jones, the defensive tackle on Kansas City, now being ruled out for the game. That just brings up Eckler's value that much more. Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, last game against Kansas City was, I believe, the wide receiver 1 on the week, if not top 3, but I believe he was wide receiver 1 here. I'm pulling it up. So he had nine targets, 7 receptions, 122 yards, and 2 touchdowns last time against Kansas City. They don't have a true physical dominant defender that can guard that kind of body type. And then Keenan Allen's just Mr. Trustworthy. So those are really good options. Justin Herbert's been absolutely phenomenal as of late. And then on Kansas City side of the ball, it's very interesting because Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he's not getting so much of the workload. Last week he had a good fantasy game, but that came on the back of 2 touchdowns. He only played, I'm trying to load it up here, I think it's like 33 or 35% of the snaps. 35% of the snaps, only had 13 opportunities, 10 carries, and 3 targets. And those 3 targets, he had 3 receptions, but only for 5 yards, which isn't a whole lot, especially against a weak Las Vegas defense. But again, that offense wasn't on the field for a lot of plays because they had a lot of chunk plays, they had a lot of good field positioning. So the volume of the team as a whole wasn't as high as I expected to be tonight. That's about my breakdown there. Looking at the line, they expect the Chiefs to, like you mentioned, win by 4, 29 to 25. I think that's a phenomenal line. With the Chargers being at home, they have the Chiefs number. I think I'm going to take the Chargers to win this game and have them with the spread. That way I get that 3-point cushion. If the Chiefs happen to win by a field goal, then I still win that spread. So I think it's safe to take the Chargers side of the line, and that's about all I have for that.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting game because the Chargers already beat the Chiefs earlier in the year, 30 to 24. But that's when the Chiefs, we all thought, a lot of people were thinking they're kind of dead. They're having a Super Bowl hangover. But in the last 5 weeks, especially with their defense picking up the pace, they have become another team. So I'm kind of curious. I'm not sure who to lean. I almost want to lean the Chiefs, just where usually it's hard to get 2 wins in a good divisional opponent. So it's going to be hard for the Chargers to sneak by. But can they keep it within 3 or 4, depending where you find your line? That I can see happening. I'm going to probably lean towards the Chiefs, but I could see the Chargers easily taking their number. And I this is one I would never bet because I don't have a good read on this game. So if you think the Chargers, hey, I don't blame you one bit because to me it's a tough game for me to pick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now we're moving on to the Saturday afternoon football game. It's the Las Vegas Raiders at the Cleveland Brown. It started off as a 6.5 spread for, of course, the Browns, but now it's a +1 for the Raiders because of obvious reasons. The Browns are having everyone have COVID, or at least cut in the COVID protocol. It's a 38.5 over under, so terrible. It's a 20-19 for the Raiders predicted total. So of course we just got breaking news that Casey Keenum is in the COVID protocol. So that leaves
Yep.
Nick Mullins as your quarterback there, because Baker, of course, is also tested positive, and then Kevin Stefanski, the head coach, is also positive, and Austin Hooper, Jarvis Landry are in the COVID protocol. So the whole team is just COVID everywhere. So this is kind of a lucky break for the Raiders, in my opinion, because it was a pretty easy, probably Cleveland Browns gonna win type thing, and now Raiders have a chance, in my opinion. Um, is there anyone I really want to start? Well, like Josh Jacobs, I don't mind. Hunter Renfrow, I mean he's been doing amazing over the last while, so keep throwing him in there. Derek Carr in 2 QB leagues, yeah, sure, why not? Other than that, you look on the other side of the ball, Nick Chubb, and then Dernis Johnson as a what the heck flex. And after that, I don't know who I'd want. What do you see?
Yeah, this game is a mess COVID-wise. Obviously, like you said, the breaking news of Case Keenum just getting testing positive for COVID. I don't think Nick Mullins is a horrible quarterback. He's borderline serviceable. The interesting thing is the Browns still have a good majority of that offensive line healthy. But it is to note, a lot of people have been talking about like, hey, if a couple O linemen caught COVID, they have all their meetings in the same rooms. They train together. It goes with every position, right? If one quarterback tests positive, there's a chance a second one will, kind of like we saw with Case Keenum. So for this game, although two of their starting offensive linemen have already tested positive, let's hope no more do, because they rely on their O-line, and they're going to need that to protect Mullins and run the ball. The interesting thing from the Cleveland side of the ball is Nick Mullins hasn't been with the Cleveland Browns too long. He was just elevated from the practice squad an hour ago, so he doesn't really know the playbook. He has a couple days to get up to speed. The game being on Saturday, it only leaves him really tomorrow to catch up and get up to speed. So I see a really strong run-heavy game from the Cleveland Browns. The Raiders are given the second most fantasy points over the last 4 weeks to the running back. They're giving up 35 total points per game on average, which is a lot. And then they're giving up 100 plus yards a game on only 25 attempts. They're giving up the second most touchdowns to the running backs. They've given up 8 touchdowns in 4 weeks. And those are against teams who don't have those high scoring quarterbacks when you think of the Raiders, or running backs when you think of the Raiders. Washington, I mean, Antonio Gibson is a great running back, but he hasn't been a stud this year. And then the Chiefs, obviously, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Darrell Williams. Those are guys that aren't like stud running backs, and still the Raiders are giving the second most points to the running back. So just imagine what Nick Chubb can do. And then I think, like you said, Dernis Johnson could be a flex this week just because they're going to run the ball. I'm going to say it's going to be a 75-25 split run pass. I wouldn't be surprised, like I said, to see 30 rush attempts to 10, 12 pass attempts or something like that. Like I believe it's going to be really heavy running on the Cleveland side of the ball. But I also think it makes the Raiders defense a sneaky play when it comes to fantasy, because Max Crosby has been super dominant getting to the quarterback, and he rushes from the left side, which is the right side of the Browns offensive line, and they're missing that player there. So Max Crosby could be getting to the quarterback for some sacks. So if you are in a league that sacks are a high point total, I know I play in some leagues that is 2 points per sack, 1 point per sack. Those 2 point per sacks, they can add up quick, especially because the Raiders have been doing a much better job at getting to the quarterback this year. So just wanted to bring that up. As you said, yeah, I'm playing Josh Jacobs. I'm playing Hunter Renfrow. Darren Waller's been ruled out of this game, and Foster Moreau has been actually very terrible over the last 3 weeks without Darren Waller, so I'm not touching Foster Moreau. Cleveland Browns. Austin Hooper's on the COVID list. I wonder, Derek, do you know if Harrison Bryant's on the
I'm
list?
honestly not sure. Well, he was ankle was his problem before, so I'm not sure if he ever was on the COVID list or not. So I'm not sure
He's
what his status is.
he's currently questionable, so that's somebody I would keep an eye on,
Yeah,
especially with
everybody being gone.
Jarvis Landry kind of being out as well.
Yeah,
Njoku was just activated from the COVID list today, so Njoku has a chance to play. So those tight ends might be some sneaky plays there because, I mean, there's not really many options to pass to. I know I said it won't be a high passing volume, but I mean, if you get 80% of 12, 15 pass attempts, then you're looking at 6, 7 targets through the tight end. So Njoku, I would play if Harrison Bryant misses. If Harrison Bryant plays, I'd probably stay away from both because they'd share that target share.
yeah. It's pretty rare where we have a Mac Jones three throwing game, three passing game, passes in a game, right? Like usually you at least have a good 15, 20 at minimum. I mean, no matter
Yeah.
how much you run, it's just that game was a whole different thing. I mean, it sucked for playing wide receivers in that game because you had nothing. Excuse me. Yeah, I do find it interesting that like last year, the NFL teams were very conscious of COVID, and they're even not having all the quarterbacks in one room and all this stuff, and keeping their backup quarterback like away from the team and all this stuff. And I'm surprised. I'm wondering if they're going to start doing that this year now that everything's ramping up again for COVID. Do you think you see that in this near future, especially with the playoffs
Um,
coming?
yeah, especially with playoffs coming, I think teams will kind of start even. They might just do the video chats for meetings instead of in-person meetings and stuff like that, just to get ahead of it and take as many precautions as they can. I mean, if your quarterback or your whatever player gets 90% compared to 100% out of the meeting, but there's a guarantee they won't catch COVID, I mean, why not do meetings that way? So,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
no, exactly. I mean, same thing with practice. It's just like keep keep the lines away from each other. Like, don't have Baker Mayfield and Casey Keenum be too close to each other because, well, then they're all of a sudden both on the COVID list, and you're starting Nick Mullins that you just pulled up from the practice squad.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. Okay, I guess we'll move into the Saturday night game, which is at the Colts at the Indianapolis. So we have the New England, of course, at Indianapolis. It's a 2 point spread, 45.5 over under, which is implied point total of about 24 to 22 for the Colts. Yeah, what do you think about that, Mars? 24 to 22 for the Colts. Do you think the Colts will sneak this through, or do you think the Patriots can just run this game, slow down? Because that's what I find interesting is the team that I find one would be best against the Patriots would be the Colts, who can also play that slow down game, dirty game, and just beat them through the run and everything else. What do you see in this game?
Yeah, if New England wants to beat Indianapolis, I don't believe they can do it with the run. The Colts have built a very powerful D line and O line. That's what they rely on. So I don't think this New England team can bully the Indianapolis Colts like they bullied the Bills. The Bills have more of a finesse type of run defense compared to this power run defense from Indianapolis. So it'll be interesting to see. I think they do have to lean on Mac Jones, which might actually be to their favor because the Colts have a terrible secondary, which is masked by that D line. Um, so as long as New England's O line can protect Mac Jones, so he can feel safe in the pocket and deliver the passes he's used to deliver, and I think Mac Jones can be very good. On the other side of the ball, it's interesting because everyone that has Jonathan Taylor has likely made the fantasy playoffs just because he's been almost two positions in one spot. He's been so dominant this year. He's the number one running back on the season by a long stretch. So if you're in the playoffs, you're playing Jonathan Taylor, but I don't expect him to have a dominant game just because that Patriots D line is also very good. They're very good at taking away your best option, so I expect even Pittman to have kind of a weaker game this week, which isn't fun for the fantasy managers, just because these are players that have got you to the playoffs, and you're going to be using them in the playoffs. Because I mean, whoever brings you to the dance, you're going to bring them right back to the dance, and you're going to dance with them and play them. So it's going to be very interesting to see what these players do. Um, I even go as far as to say I might not play Pittman Jr. if I have a better option at wide receiver. I know he's been great. I know he's a good football player in real life, but I just don't trust that. I think the Patriots can throw a lot of different schemes at Carson Wentz, confuse him a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Colts can do there. I do think they will lean on the run just because, I mean, they've been super dominant with that. You saw they could dominate the Bucs defensive line. So I think that's what they're going to try to. I don't think Colts try to go away from their usual game plan. They're just going to stick to it, pound the rock. But it depends on efficiency. Where both teams do want to run the ball, slow down the clock, and all those kind of things. I don't expect it to be high scoring game. So seeing this 46 over under, I know both these teams have been decent in scoring the football, but like the Colts, I think they're third in the NFL over. Oh, on the season, they're third in the NFL in scoring, which nobody really thinks about. But I think the game type here is going to slow down the scoring. So it'll be interesting to see what happens here. So yeah, players I will play in the game with confidence. I will play Ramondre Stevenson with confidence if Damian Harris misses. They've just had a bye week and he's still questionable with the hamstring, which I don't like to hear from a running back. So Ramondre Stevenson could get the go ahead and could get the workload. If both backs are there, I'll play Damian Harris just because he's been pretty good in points per game when healthy. And then I wouldn't play Ramondre Stevenson if Damian Harris is healthy. I'm not really playing any of the pass catchers out of Indianapolis, but for the Patriots, I will play. I think Jacoby Myers is the guy this week. He's kind of been that safety blanket, and I think they're going to have to rely on him quite a bit. So Jacoby Myers is the one I'll play. I'll play Hunter Henry if I have to at the tight end spot. And that's all the players I'm playing in this game. I don't want to play Carson Wentz unless it's super flex. I don't want to play Mac Jones unless it's super flex. So that's kind of my takeaway on the game. And who do I think wins the game? Let's go for the Patriots. 8 in a row. 8 in a row for the
Well, that's the
Patriots.
thing. That's why I'm so torn. It's if there wasn't for this bye that just happened, I would almost pick the Colts because come on, seven in a row. That's amazing. But like they have a number coming. They have to probably get beaten one of these weeks. But then Belichick after a bye, good luck other team. Like it's usually that's it. Like he just always figures you out, and when coming off of a bye, so I'm leaning the same way. I'm gonna go Patriots as well, and take the points as well. Just it's a nice little buffer, and yeah, I can see the Patriots winning this game pretty handily. I mean, I don't think they're gonna blow them out or nothing, but
No.
I can see just Belichick planning correctly for Jonathan Taylor and everyone else. Although it's hard to stop Taylor either way because he is a truck running through those lines.
It's going to be two good coaches, two great coaches against each other. It's going to be 2005 type of football, ground and pound,
Yeah.
and it's going to be a physical battle. It's going to be a really fun game, but it's going to be a slower game. But sometimes I enjoy those games of just seeing the chess match between the coaches, the O&D lines, kind of the battle in the trenches. I'm very excited for good old-fashioned football in this game.
Yeah, it's always fun. I just anytime there's any good plays or good smart decisions, like you like to see how they plan for these teams that are different because there's a reason the Patriots beat the Bills, and it's just they strapped down, just ran, and they showed what they could do. If the Bills would have ran their quarterback a few more times, they might have came out on top on that one, right? But that's what Belichick does best is he figures out what he has, what he can do, and just makes a game plan for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so we'll do a few Sunday noon games just to shorten up Sunday's podcast. So we have the Tennessee Titans at the Pittsburgh Steelers. It's a 1 point spread, 43 and a half, 43 over under, sorry, which is implied point total of 22 to 21 for the Titans. So that's basically a tie game. I mean, it's basically a pick 'em. Um, the Tennessee Titans have looking pretty flat lately, I find. I mean, they beat the Jaguars, sure, but what does that really tell us? Ever since Derrick Henry left their lineup, they haven't been performing as well, especially with A.J. Brown out as well for quite a few weeks now. Um, and Julio Jones, not really proving to be much. I mean, everyone was kind of hoping he was going to have a big week last week, and he didn't really show what we would love to have seen from Julio Jones of yesteryears. Looking on the other side of the ball, I mean, Najee Harris and Deontay Johnson, they're still proving they can do stuff. Big Ben, hey, coming through whenever if you give him time, he will. He can throw some nice dimes every once in a while, despite his how beat up he is. And then Pat Fryermuth, you don't mind chucking your lineup either because he's getting a lot of volume. And then after that, I mean Chase Claypool, he's a wide receiver too. Uh, After that, there's no one really I would love to start on these teams. Maybe Deontay Foreman, but depends how much he gives to Dontrell Hilliard, right? So, what do you see, Mars?
Yeah, I'm gonna start off with the second last name you mentioned is I'm playing Dante Foreman with a lot of confidence. Over the last 2 weeks, he's had 15 and 20 opportunities, which are very good. And the Pittsburgh Steelers defense over the last 4 weeks have been given the most fantasy points to the running back position. They've given up 100 rush attempts for 532 yards and 7 touchdowns. They've given up 9 total touchdowns to the running back over the last 4 weeks, which is dead last in the NFL. And they give up the most rush yards per attempt in the last 4 weeks as well. So, I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster for the Pittsburgh side of the defense, which allows Dante Foreman to chew up on them. I know Hilliard has been involved with this offense, but last week he only had 6 carries and 2 targets to Dante Foreman's 2 targets and 13 rush attempts. So Hilliard's more of that change of pace role where Dante Foreman is the true number one running back in this room. And he scored a touchdown last week. He's averaging 4.4 yards per attempt. He's averaging actually almost 14 yards per target, which is like very good. He hasn't dropped a target yet this year. So I do like Dante Foreman this weekend. And then Julio Jones only played 45% of the snaps, but he had 6 receptions, and he was actually amongst the tops in wide receivers this week in targets per route run. I think this was their way to ease him back in a game they were well under control. Now going into Pittsburgh, they're going to have to rely a little bit on Julio Jones. With AJ Brown not being activated yet, he is able to come back. So we'll find out Saturday or Sunday if AJ Brown comes back. And regardless if he does or not, I will play Julio as a fringe wide receiver 2/3. Um, Pittsburgh have been giving up 37 points to the wide receiver, which is 8th in the NFL over the last 4 weeks as well. So there's a lot of points to go against this Pittsburgh defense. They are not what they used to be. So yeah, I will personally play Julio Jones, expecting around 8 targets to him. And he's been dominant across his career. And we saw when he had his only game with 8 targets this season, he took that for 128 yards. So I will play Julio. I will play Dante Foreman. But those are the only 2 players I'll play. Ryan Tannehill in a super flex. I don't really have trust in him in one quarterback leagues. And then the other side of the ball, it's the main ones, as you mentioned. Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, Pat Fryermuth, and then Najee Harris, and nobody else. I'm not playing Big Ben, although I am playing his receiving options. I'm not playing Big Ben.
Okay, yeah. So Mars, since you're playing
Yep.
Julio Jones or Pittman, since you mentioned Pittman earlier,
Julio Jones.
Julio Jones or Claypool.
That's a tough one because I talked about last week on the pod how we've been seeing kind of Big Ben let the ball sling lately, and Chase Claypool has 8 or more targets in 3 of his last 4 games. Um, wow, and he also has
Yeah, see,
Chase
there's the
Claypool.
important questions. I mean, this is quarterfinals for a lot of
I know.
play. A lot of people are just made the playoffs, so we got to make
Wow.
help them with those tough decisions.
I I'm going Chase Claypool.
Yeah,
Although, yeah, I'm going Chase Claypool.
yeah, I don't blame you. I think I would too, just because I can see the Steelers winning this game. Not that I don't think the Tennessee Titans aren't bad. I think especially once AJ Brown and Henry comes back, especially for the actual playoffs, that's going to help them a lot. But like someone had mentioned before, is Tennessee Titans, they're 9-4. They're basically going to make the playoffs no matter what. Where the Steelers, they got to fight like crazy to be able to have any chance of getting into the playoffs right now. So like they almost have more on the line this game, and I'm curious if that's going to almost be the decider where they're just going to be fighting so hard, and Tennessee Titans might have the foot off the gas a little bit.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Tennessee rushes AJ Brown back or not because, like you said, they're pretty much a lock to make the playoffs. But it is interesting looking at their schedule and who they have left for teams to play. They have the Steelers this week. It's an away game. It's in Pittsburgh. And then they have 49ers next week. I think the 49ers, the right now 49ers, can beat this Tennessee team.
Yeah.
And then they have the Dolphins, which to me, I would give the chip to Tennessee to win that game, but I still think the Dolphins are a threat to beat Tennessee. And then they have the Texans, which should be a free win. So when I look at that, they should finish 2-2 or 1-3 down the stretch, which at worst puts them at 10-7, which should be a lock in the playoffs unless something very weird in the league happens over the next couple of weeks. So yeah, like you said, I think they're a lock to make the playoffs.
Yeah, and that's what makes me wonder: do they, not try as hard as they should? Where Pittsburgh Steelers, if they lose this, they're basically locked out of the playoffs at this point.
Yeah.
Because they'll be 6-7-1, and it's hard to come back from that after that. I mean, even the Tennessee Titans would be way above them by then. So yeah, no, that's for sure. Just a reminder also that Pittsburgh will be coming off a mini bye because they played Thursday night, so that would give them a little extra rest. So, and then of course the Steelers or the Tennessee Titans is opposite. They're coming off a regular week, but then they play against the 49ers on Thursday. So they actually have a short week next week. So they might be looking too much at that 49ers game, and they might try to sleepwalk through the Steelers game, and that might be what they do is sleepwalk. So we'll see. I'm going to probably pick the Steelers side just because, but it's still a tough matchup, and that's why it's a 1-point spread. So looking at our next game, we have the Carolina Panthers at the Buffalo Bills. It's a 10.5-point spread of 44.5 over under, which is, of course, an implied point total of 27-17 for the Bills. I mean, and that's pretty easy to determine who was going to be on top of that spread. I mean, they're 5-8 versus 7-16. Cam Newton, we know he can run, but that's about it. We haven't seen him throw much very well. DJ Moore, of course, pulled a hammy, and he's day-to-day for this week, so we will see how he goes. But then on the other side of the ball, Josh Allen does have a foot sprain on his day-to-day as well. Emmanuel Sanders is likely out this week, and he could be out for multiple weeks. So maybe that does boost up people like Gabriel Davis or even Dawson Knox, which, I mean, Dawson Knox you're starting anyways, likely if you have him. Josh Allen, if he's playing, you're starting him. Stephon Diggs, there's no question you're starting. Dawson Knox, and I would play the Buffalo defense pretty easily as well, because Cam Newton could do pretty good in fantasy, but then can also make the defense have a lot of points too. It could be a win-win for both sides, no matter who you grab out of those two. But I think Buffalo Bills got this pretty easily. I think this is a team they can just beat single-handedly, unless Josh Allen's out. What do you see, Merce?
Yeah, a lot of the same. I mean, I expect Josh Allen to play.
Yeah.
Carolina has been giving up kind of around the 20 most points to the quarterback, so they're a little bit of a tougher matchup to the quarterback. I do think they match up very well against this Buffalo offense, but I do think this is going to be the Bills' statement game of, okay, it's time to shift the gears and make the playoffs. They've been kind of sliding recently. I know they've had some tough matchups, but they've been sliding. When you look over the last 4 weeks, they got absolutely destroyed by the Colts. Then they turned around, destroyed the Saints, and then they lost to the Pats, lost to the Bucks. They're 7-6 right now. They have the same record as the Colts, who's another team that's fighting for the playoffs and the wild card spots. So this is a team who needs to win, and they need to win now. That Panthers offense is brutal. I think they're in a very bad spot. The Panthers offense matches up so poorly against this Buffalo defense that I expect this to be a blowout. I don't expect Carolina to score the 17 implied points. So I would like to see Buffalo kind of turn things around. They beat the Dolphins 35-0 this year. They beat Washington 43-21. They beat the Texans 40-0. They beat the Chiefs 38-20. Like, they've had some dominant games this year, and I expect this to be another one of those. And I would like to see them get back on track. I am playing Josh Allen with some confidence. Although he does have the mild turf toe, I don't think it's going to stop or limit him a whole lot. Stephon Diggs, I'm playing with a lot of confidence. Dawson Knox has some of the most red zone targets in the NFL, so I'm playing Dawson Knox with a lot of confidence. I'm not starting any of these running backs, especially because this Carolina defense averages, let me find it for you guys here. Ooh, Okay, they give up the 12th most fantasy points to the running back, but I believe they've had some tough matchups as not even. So Carolina is actually bleeding a little bit of points to the running back lately. So they've been slipping over the last 4 weeks, which is interesting. I did not know that. Um, but yeah, like I said, I'm still not playing any of those running backs because that running back room's murky and Josh Allen takes away the goal line touches and all that. And so, yeah, I'm not playing the running backs here. And then the other side of the ball, I'll play Chuba Hubbard if I need a fringe running back 2-3, hoping he falls into the end zone. Cam Newton was named the starter again this week, but they also said they might mix in Philip Walker. Although they did that last week, Philip Walker steps on the field, throws an interception. So these quarterbacks on Carolina side of the ball did combine to be a top 12 quarterback last week, but it was a lower than average quarterback scoring week at the same time. So it's hard to give them too much credit because they football wise were quite bad last week. Interesting though, Robbie Anderson had his best game of the year. Why? Nobody knows. That could have been Atlanta's horrible secondary, but he had 12 targets, which was a season high. He had 7 receptions, season high, 84 yards, season high, and he had a touchdown, which it puts him 4 on the year. So I mean, if you think Robbie Anderson could be pretty good, I would play Robbie Anderson if DJ Moore plays. I don't think Robbie Anderson is good enough to face the number one quarterback on the Bills. But if DJ Moore comes, plays, and takes that away, I think Robbie Anderson as the wide receiver too would actually have the most fantasy value there. But again, that kind of value, we're talking wide receiver fringe 3-4, so it's not somebody I'm trying to play in my lineups. But if I need to in a pinch, I guess I would play Robbie.
Yeah, no, for sure. When it comes to Chuba Hubbard, would you rather Chuba Hubbard or D'Ernest Johnson?
I would rather. I think I would rather Dernis Johnson just because I expect Cleveland to score more points than I expect Carolina to score this week. And then Cleveland doesn't have a running quarterback. So yeah, I would go Chuba slightly, or I would go Dernis slightly over Chuba.
Yeah. See, it's just, Saturday game. We got to think of those of who to
Very
flex in and
true.
who to flex out, right? Because you have to make that decision on Saturday whether you want to play D'Ernest Johnson or do you wait for Chuba Hubbard on the later games. And that's another thing to
Yeah.
think about is if you know someone's playing a Thursday, Saturday game and someone else is questionable or a team that has a lot of COVID cases on a Sunday or
Mm-hmm.
Monday game, you may want to play that Thursday, Saturday person just to make sure in case by the time Sunday rolls around, all of a sudden that team, look at the Washington. Washington, there's rampant COVID right now there too. And, all of a sudden it comes to those Sunday game and you don't know what's going to happen. So do keep
Yeah.
that in mind if you have any players that you think might be questionable for COVID, especially on teams that have it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you actually, sorry, I didn't want to cut you off there, but I was gonna say you stole my tip of the week. That's what I was gonna say is if you need a tiebreaker solution for any players this week, and one of the players are playing an earlier game, that's your tiebreaker because you don't know what's gonna come about with COVID. So yes, excellent point there, Derek. I'm with you there.
yeah, especially on the COVID-ridden teams. Like there's some of them that like the teams you just know there's COVID spreading all over, like Miami and Washington, and there's quite a few of them in the that we'll talk about on Sunday. Yeah, that the only problem is do we know what's going on for Josh Allen? If they get up quick, we might see some Mitch Trubisky if they're just gonna lay away the game.
That's a good point, but if they lay away the game, I think it's on the back of Josh Allen, so I still think he's worth playing.
Hey Mars, we got a question in the chat, and a
Okay,
shout out from Ben Miller. Ben Miller shouted out saying Boudreaux's going live on Thursday. Count me in. And then
you
Chris
know it.
Simpson has a question. He said he's gone 11-3 with Wentz and Daniel Jones is QB Superflex League Dynasty. He says, "What's your outlook for Danny Dimes for rest of season?"
Wow, that's a good one. I actually got rid of my only share of Daniel Jones this year, so I have 0 Daniel Jones shares right now. But I actually love kind of his matchups rest of season. So we're looking at Dallas this week. He's still practicing limited, but if he's cleared to play, I'm comfortable playing him against Dallas. Dallas has been giving up quite a bit of points to the quarterback here. If you give me a chance to pull it up, they're giving up just over 16 points to the quarterback, which they've played some pretty poor quarterbacks lately. So I will play Daniel Jones against the Cowboys. I'll play Daniel Jones against Philly, and then I'll play him against Chicago. We just saw what Aaron Rodgers did to Chicago. I know it's Aaron Rodgers, but these are teams that I don't even think can deal well with a mobile quarterback. And then Daniel Jones' weapons are looking to be more and more healthy for the first time this year. Nobody has kind of been healthy at the same time with the quarterback and the options here. Like Saquon's been out for chunks. Galladay's been hurt for chunks. Kadarius Toney's been out for chunks. Um, Sterling Shepard, Darius Slayton. So nobody's kind of been together at once. And it seems like over week 15, 16, 17, we might get that. And if we have that, I think Daniel Jones can be a very good option. He started the year over the first 4 weeks with 23 points, 31 points, was quarterback 2 on the week, then 16 against Atlanta, and he didn't have to do a whole lot in that game. And then the Saints, he went again and was the quarterback 2 on the week. So we've seen him be dominant. Then he kind of got hurt. He had that, I think it was a concussion that first game. And then Saquon was out, so he didn't have his best running back taking pressure off of him. The O-line's been a bit better as of recent. So, yeah, I think Daniel Jones kind of going end of season. He could be a sneaky good quarterback. I'm sorry that you have Carson Wentz as your quarterback this week because I don't know how well Carson Wentz will do against this Patriots defense, who has been quite strong. But I'm with you, man. I have Carson Wentz in my super flex, and I have to start him. I have him and Derek Carr, so I'm in a scary spot as well. But then Carson Wentz, I know you didn't ask this question. I'm going full talk here. Is Carson Wentz against Arizona, I feel really good about, and then against Vegas in Week 17. So if you can get by this Week 15 matchup, I think those quarterbacks are gonna be cruising for you. So
He just said he is on a bye, thankfully. So
hey, let's go,
there
Chris.
we
Okay,
go.
Chris.
Nice job.
I feel super good about those quarterbacks, especially knowing that those are your quarterbacks. It's likely you have stronger positional players like the running backs and the wide receivers there. So yeah, and I mean 11-3 record with those quarterbacks. You've been doing the right moves here. So best of luck in the playoffs, and I think you have a strong chance to have this in the bag.
My only concern is, of course, the injury. I mean, Daniel Jones is not playing this week, right? In Week
He
15.
could be.
I thought yesterday, he was reported out of the lineup in Week 15 against the Cowboys.
Oh, my update here says he's remained limited, but they haven't completely ruled him out.
Okay, because I knew he was going to see a second specialist for his spine there, so his neck injury. So that's why I'm not sure. Like, that's the only concern for me is his injury is the only thing. Other than that, if he was starting every week, yeah, I'd be kind of a little high on him as well. But my concern is the injury, of course.
I have another little tidbit here, and it says he goes to see the specialist tomorrow, and that specialist is who decides if he's cleared for contact. So we'll know tomorrow. They say it's likely he will miss the game, but he's not completely ruled out. But again, if Chris has the bye,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah, that's
he
a
should be all set.
huge buy for him, I have to say.
Yes,
He is also
very much
bragging
so.
his core over here with Aaron Jones, JT, Fournette, Lamb, Jefferson, Fant, and Gesicki.
So Jonathan Taylor got you to the playoffs. Jonathan Taylor, JJ, and Lamb.
And
Okay.
Fournette. Fournette got
Fournette,
him to
yeah,
the
he's been a
playoffs
stud.
too. I mean,
So I think this is Chris, man. You definitely hit the lucky side of the stick because Aaron Jones is limited this week, Fournette's limited this week, and then Daniel Jones being out. So the fact that you got the bye, those players should be healthy in Week 16. So I think you're going to be cruising when Week 16 hits.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. It's wonderful to hear. Good luck in the playoffs, Chris. We'll move on to the next game. We have the Houston Texans at the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's started off as a 2.5 spread. It moved all the way to a 5. My only guess is it because Urban Meyer is gone? Because this is for the Jaguars. It's an over-under of 39.5, so it's a 22-17 implied point total. And the only thing I've seen that really shifted over the week is Rex Burkhead's out and Urban Meyer is gone. So it is an AFC South divisional game. Last time they faced off was week 1. It was 37-21 for the Texans. A lot of people lost their survivor pick on the first week if they picked the Texans to lose that and the Jaguars to win. Davis Mills is starting at quarterback again. Rex Burkhead, like I said, is out. So maybe David Johnson, maybe Royce Freeman, but I really don't want to try either of them unless I'm super desperate. But I'm probably not that desperate if I'm in the playoffs. Brandon Cooks, I mean, he just keeps scoring points when he needs to, so you can't count him out. I mean, he's wide receiver. He's a wide receiver 2 on the year, and I would project him to be at least another wide receiver 2 today or on Sunday. Looking at the other side of the ball, well, could we maybe see some new life for Trevor Lawrence with Urban Meyer gone? It would be nice to see that. Looking at the running backs, now that Urban Meyer's gone, hopefully we can see James Robinson because he is way more talented and he is the better running back. So I would like to see him get a lot more touches, and I hope that he can be at least a good RB2, if not RB1. After that, there's no one really I love on this team. I mean, Marvin Jones, you could start him if you're desperate, but not wanting to start. And when it comes to the who wins, who loses, I could see that's tough because if Urban Meyer was still there, I'd pick the Texans. But with Urban Meyer gone, I could see the Jaguars rallying around that and winning. What do you see, Merce?
I mean, where do I start when it comes to the Jaguar side of the ball? This is going to take the rest of the podcast time because there is a lot of reports of interesting thing about Urban Meyer lately. He kicked his kicker, which why? Just like that's not a head
I
coaching thing
missed
to
that.
do. So Josh Lambo, who's been their kicker for 3 or 4 seasons, in the preseason games, he missed a couple kicks. I think it was before a regular season game when Josh Lambo was warming up in week 1. Urban Meyer came up to Josh Lambo, said, hey, dipshit, don't miss your kicks today, and kicked Josh Lambo in the back of the leg. So that's week 1 off to a bad foot. And then so 2 weeks ago, this to me, this is a hilarious story that sums up Urban Meyer as he had zero control or had zero idea of what was going on with his team.
He
So
doesn't
the
even know all the
media,
names.
what's
He
that?
doesn't even know all the names on his players.
No, but one of the players, one of the safeties, his name is slipping my mind right now. Good thing I'm not Urban Meyer. One of the safeties has been increasing kind of in his playing time. Everyone thinks he's better than the playing time the Jaguars been giving him. So the media 2 weeks ago after the game said, hey, do you think you'll be giving the safety more time next week? He seems to be doing pretty good and all this and that. And Urban Meyer said something along the lines like, yeah, we'll see what we can do. I'd like to see him on the field more. Then this past Sunday after the game, they said, hey, I thought you were going to give him more time. What did you think about the time you gave him? And Urban Meyer said, well, I don't have the numbers on hand right now in front of me, but I'm sure he played a little bit more than he has been. That safety did not see the field this Sunday, so he has no idea what's going on with this team. There was the same thing, the controversy with James Robinson going into the game after some controversy on the field with a little bit of an injury and a fumble. He kind of punished him, and then he was a little bit hurt, and then Urban Meyer sent him back on the field, and the game was way out of hand. There was no need to send him back on the field. He should have just protected him. And then Trevor Lawrence has been talking to the media that there's a lot of bad stuff going on in the locker room. Nobody's happy. So it was time. It was well overdue. Goodbye, Urban Meyer. Best of luck in the future. But honestly, you're not ready to be an NFL coach anytime soon. But then getting back to football now. Sorry, I had to spill that out for sure. Darrell Bevell, the offensive coordinator of the Jacksonville Jaguars, is now taken over as the interim head coach. Darrell Bevell, I believe, more in than Urban Meyer. He'll be able to shift this offense a little more focused to the skill players. Their best players are Marvin Jones, James Robinson, and Laviska Shenault. And that spread offense they were trying to run, it had a lot of tight end sets. It had a lot of short routes and then routes that were the hot route was designed to be on the clustered side of the field instead of putting players in space. I believe Darrell Bevell will do a much better job of getting his skill players the ball with space. So I expect actually Jacksonville to win this game. Their defense has actually been a top half of the league unit, if not better. Like their defense has been very, very good. On a per snap basis. It's just their offense has constantly put that defense in a position to fail with field position and all of that. So I do think Jacksonville wins this game. And I love that the line did shift with the firing of Urban Meyer. It shows that Urban Meyer, even the Vegas sports books believe he was the biggest problem with this organization. In terms of players to play, Laviska Shenault has 0 touchdowns on the season. He's been honestly brutal for fantasy. Talent wise, statistic wise, statistic wise, he has been brutal. Um, but I think there's sneaky value in Laviska Shenault. I'm not playing him unless I'm in a 3 wide receiver league, PPR, and kind of need a last minute pickup for wide receiver. I love his DFS value this week, so I'm interested in Laviska. I think Marvin Jones can do very well this week, and I do have James Robinson as a top 10 running back this week. I think he's going to get plenty of looks. Trevor Lawrence has been crying for him to get on the field. Darrell Bevel has kind of hinted to the media he wants to become the head coach. He wants to kind of just be the interim this year, but then do enough to prove that he deserves to be the head coach. And when they look at their schedules, they have the Texans this week and the Jets next week. If he wins those 2 matchups, there's a good chance that he could be the head coach next year, and especially if players buy in and love him. So I expect him to try to score the ball. It's not just going to be put out a team just to finish the season. It's going to be we're going to try to score the ball and make Jacksonville believe into him. So James Robinson and Marvin Jones, I will play. Like I said, Laviska Shenault's a reach. Houston side of the ball, Davis Mills is averaging quite a bit of yards per game, not so many touchdowns, but again, yardage is points. And I think that lends well to Brandon Cooks being a very good option again. In PPR leagues, I'm playing David Johnson, and if I need a running back to play outside of David Johnson, Royce Freeman looked pretty good last week with 6 receptions and 10 carries, so he had some volume there. So that's about my breakdown on this game, and I do expect the Jags to win.
Yeah, no, I can't wait to see what this new Jaguars life could breathe into them, right? They could have quite a bounce back just where they know Urban Meyer's gone, and they're going to probably try their hardest for their new interim head coach because you've seen that time and time again. That seems to happen every time that everyone seems to hate the coach and then the coach gets fired. The team wins after that. Like, and with the Texans and Jets on their schedule, let's get these 2 wins, and then that way they can feel better about themselves going to next year. Hopefully, we can see something out of Trevor Lawrence. We haven't really seen any wow moments, even in garbage time. So hopefully, we can actually start to see those a little bit. Maybe the Darrell Bevel will put him in better position to actually do that and have wide receivers not running into each other pretty much. So yeah, let's hope that things now change for the Jaguars and they can take care of these Texans. The only thing is with the point total of the -5 spread, it does make me wonder if the Texans can at least cover that number because that's pretty easy number for them to cover considering they're both pretty even teams. And the only reason that I would have Jaguars beating them with a spread of 5 is because of the coach being gone.
Yeah, no, fair. I just want to bring up that like Jacksonville after their bye, if you look, they held the Bills to 6 points, which I know fluky game, a lot of turnovers there, but they held the Colts to 23, which for the Colts that was kind of a lower number. They've been hot. The Rams scored 37. That wasn't too good, but then the Titans only scored 20 in a game that Jacksonville scored 0, suggesting that the Titans had the ball a lot. They had a lot of field position and all that, and the Titans only scored 20 points. The Falcons scored 21. It was 3 touchdowns. One of them was kind of a fluke. So outside of that Rams game, the Jaguars have been quite good since the bye, and the Seahawks game. I guess Seahawks put up 31. So I actually do believe in this Jacksonville defense shutting down Houston, and Jacksonville can honestly run all over Houston, which I think is going to be a lot of fun for James Robinson. Houston's given the 4th most fantasy points to running backs over the last 4 weeks. They're giving up 31 points to the running back. They're giving a lot of rushing touchdowns, a plethora of rushing yards. I mean, they're giving up over 5.0 yards per carry. And then they're giving up only 4 yards per target, which isn't a whole lot. That's kind of good there for Houston. But yeah, the running back on the ground have just been dominating Houston, and that's not only because a lot of teams have been running. I'm talking yards per carry, and I'm not talking only total points here. So yeah, Houston can be ran all over on. So I'm very excited for James Robinson this week.
Yeah, for sure. And don't forget, guys, this we talked about a few Saturday and Thursday night games. So do remember to keep those players in your positional places and not your flex because we don't know what's going to go on for Sunday. Make sure that if you have any tiebreakers, they do lean towards teams that maybe don't have the COVID focused teams, right? Like the Miami Dolphins, the Washington make sure if those players compared to a Thursday or Saturday player, play those guys instead. I do rather lean towards the early games, just to be safe, because you have to make it through this week. So going big, go home, sometimes not always the best thing. Because if you have a player that all of a sudden can't play, then you're in real trouble, right? Don't forget there is quite a few injuries, and check those injury reports, especially when it comes to the Saturday games. Do you have anything on to say there, Mars? Any mailbag questions or sneaky pickups?
Yeah. So just to end this podcast, we had a couple mailbag questions coming in. So the first one's actually from Ben Miller, who's in the chat. He asked, um, Chiefs defense or Browns defense? Automatically not playing the Chiefs tonight just because the Chargers have kind of been on fire recently, and Chris Jones, the defensive tackle for the Chiefs, is out, and he's been a big part of this Chiefs defense. He's able to rush the quarterbacks and get to the quarterbacks lately, so I'm shying away from the Chiefs defense. Thursday night game, prime time, with two high firepower offenses that I don't think the Chargers are going to give enough turnovers and stuff like that for the Chiefs. I know they've been great. I know they had a phenomenal week against the Raiders, the struggling Raiders last week. So I'm not playing the Chiefs. In terms of the Browns defense, this is another defense that where I believe their offense will be so bad, it'll put their defense kind of at a disadvantage. And although I say it that way, the game might be a quicker game because I expect the Browns to run a lot, which doesn't give the Raiders enough time to turn the ball over multiple times against the Browns defense. And then the Brown defense also has a lot of players missing due to COVID. I had the list here. I can pull it up. I can read the Browns players out on defense. So Cleveland Browns, we have John Johnson, DB, Troy Hill, CB, Malik McDowell, defensive tackle, Ifedi Odenigbo. Don't know how to pronounce his name. My apologies. Defensive end out. Defensive end McKinley. He's really good. He's out. So those are just like a couple stud defensive players from Cleveland that are out in a game that their offense is going to be really bad. So Ben Miller, I'm sorry, I don't have any advice between those two because I'd rather not play those two defenses. I do think there's other sneaky defenses to be played this week. So yeah, I would just have a peek and keep an eye kind of on the COVID list. Kind of like a Philadelphia defense could be kind of good because Washington's going to be missing a lot of players. Divisional matchup, expected to be a low over under. I think like a Philly defense can be kind of good there. So I think there are some sneaky defenses this week that can be played. Arizona Cardinals have played a couple tough matchups lately, so they might be on the waivers. They have Detroit, TJ Hawkinson's out. They might not have both their running backs. So that's another sneaky team you can play. So I do think there's sneaky teams outside of those two that you brought up. Unfortunately, if they're not available in your leagues, I apologize, but I do think there's some teams out there.
Yeah, you probably should apologize because they're likely on your team. No, I would have to lean towards the Browns, but I don't like either. Like Marcel said,
Yeah.
they're not even a top, like a defensive one. They're past the 12 point. I would honestly, Mars, question right here, since you're a Raiders fan, Raiders or Browns defense?
I would actually play the Raiders
Yeah,
defense
me too.
over the Browns.
Yeah,
I would.
Eagles. I would
They,
have rather have than the Raiders, though.
yeah, I would rather have the Eagles.
Yeah.
I'm trying to bring up the ownership on ESPN of defenses here. So it's loading right here. Let me get all defenses in here because this could be a pretty good detector of teams that aren't owned. So looking through this right now, like the Raiders only owned in 8.8% of leagues. Even the Jaguars, we just talked about the Jaguars being a decent defense lately. They had a overall number one defensive week against the Bills. They play Houston at home. They're only owned in 10% of leagues. So I think that's another good one. Minnesota, if they're available, so they're available in 33% of leagues. Chicago all of a sudden is missing a lot of players. I think Minnesota could be a sneaky play. Harrison Smith's a playmaker, so you never know what can happen there. So that's another one. So I think there are sneaky options, like I said, out on the waiver. The Eagles here, I have their number 29.5% of leagues, so they're only owned in one out of every three leagues. So there are some sneaky plays kind of on the waivers right now that I think at least one of these teams we mentioned should be available.
Now, Mars, do you see a little dig there at the last question? Can Derek Carr throw in the wind?
boy, can you throw in the wind? No. We're about to
Yeah.
see the last time these two teams played, the Raiders won in a huge win game. I don't think this is going to be a Derek Carr game. He hasn't thrown more than two touchdowns, or he hasn't thrown more than one touchdown in 5 of his last 6 games. So Derek Carr has been horrible lately. He doesn't have weapons. His O-line has graded bottom 5 in the league lately. Alex Leatherwood, the number 17 overall pick in the draft, has just been god awful. So for Derek Carr's sake, get him out of Vegas.
Yeah.
I mean, get him
It,
out of
it's
Vegas.
kind of
He's
funny. Like people are always like, "Oh yeah, Raiders need a new quarterback. Get Derek Carr out of there." Now it's like get Derek Carr out of there to save a good quarterback to put him somewhere else
yeah,
because he's definitely
honestly,
shown that he can. He is a quarterback. He is good.
yeah,
Much
and
rather
I
him than Baker Mayfield myself.
agreed. And I've been kind of working on this little project where I'm just trying to speculate kind of off-season moves. Um, And for the New Orleans Saints, um, there's two different moves I can see the Saints doing. Just kind of their defense is kind of in a compete now. They paid Kamara. They kind of got to make him a viable option soon. And then they do have money if they're able to offload Michael Thomas. They do have money to pick up one of those new receivers on the market because there's a bunch of receivers on the market. Two moves the Saints can do is trade their first round draft pick for Derek Carr. I think that would put the Raiders in a full rebuild mode where they lost a bunch of players this year to some off field incidents. And then Darren Waller's been quite hurt. I think the Raiders can rebuild, have a young Hunter Renfrow that they can build around. Josh Jacobs, I don't expect them to re sign him, let him walk. So they can either do that or a three-way trade. Hear me out. A three-way trade between the Saints, Houston, and Miami. So there's no offense that fits Tua better than Sean Payton's Saints offense. That offense is perfect for Tua. Alvin Kamara would take a lot of pressure off of Tua. So the way I would see this is the Saints give this year's number 1 and 2 first and second round draft picks to the Dolphins for Tua. The Dolphins then take both their first round draft picks of their own, plus that first round draft pick from the Saints, and trade it to Houston for Deshaun Watson. So I think that three-way trade would be very interesting. It kind of solves every team's problem. It puts Houston in a full rebuild with a lot of pieces in this year's draft. So I think that's a very interesting trade as well. So I know that's going far off the handle here when we're talking about can Derek Carr throw in the wind, but I just thought that those were some interesting speculations of mine. But yeah, to respond, Derek Carr only throws 5 yards down the field anyway, so yes, he can throw in that any kind of win.
Yeah, no, it's kind of funny that you say that Tua for the Saints because who was he comped as soon as he came out? Drew Brees, of course, and I
Oh,
mean that's the thing.
yep. So there you go. And
Yeah,
I
that's who he
mean,
was most heavily comped to be is Drew Brees. Yep. So if that were true, you might see Drew Brees, you know, not 2.0, but a worse version because I doubt he's gonna be Drew Brees. Drew Brees is Hall of Fame for a reason.
well, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So any other
Um,
questions, Mars?
yeah, another mailbag question, which this one I thought I was set in stone in at first, but now I'm not. So I think it's a very interesting one. So Tony Starks at Twan on Twitter, half PPR start 2. Michael Carter, who is supposed to play this weekend for the Jets. Then Devontae Smith and Darnell Mooney. Now, off the bat, I said Michael Carter, Darnell Mooney. No questions asked. I think Darnell Mooney is going to blow up this week. We've been seeing him get the target share, the air yards. He's been getting everything. Justin Fields is starting to come around, and they're going to be playing against one of those worst secondaries in Minnesota. Allen Robinson's not going to be there. He's on the COVID list, so it just shows that Darnell Mooney might have a high target share. If he has 10 targets this week, I wouldn't be surprised. And we've seen him with 4 receptions, 120 yards multiple times this year, so I don't see why Darnell Mooney isn't a good playoff play. Kind of, you can expect him to have a safe floor. He just needs 3 receptions to get 60 plus yards. So I think he can bring a kind of a high floor with tremendous upside. Um, then Michael Carter, If it's released that Michael Carter is going to go back to his regular workload, I'll play Michael Carter. If not, with all the injuries or all the COVID listing from Washington, I think that puts Devontae Smith in a really good place to play some pretty good football. He and Jalen Hurts were really starting to build a connection before Jalen Hurts went down with the ankle injury and then their bye week. So I think Devontae Smith can bounce back. So if I had to order them, it's Darnell Mooney 1, Michael Carter 2 if he has that expected workload, and then Devontae Smith 3. But I would put Michael Carter and Devontae Smith kind of at that same place. How about you, Derek?
I would have Darnell Mooney as one, just with Allen Robinson out because of COVID. And I could see him getting that workload. And I mean, you got to hope for something. I'm guessing this is it is half PPR. Okay, yeah, it has been confirmed. When it comes to the other two, I would lean Michael Carter, but I do question Mars. Well, of course, what the rest of the stuff looks like. But I want to ask you a question because I do lean Michael Carter as my second option. For Devontae Smith, does it matter whether Jalen Hurts or Gardner Minshew starts?
It doesn't to me.
Okay, that's why I just wanted. So when it comes Sunday, he still has options of all three of this, so he can wait all the way to Sunday to know out of those three who to pick. So at least he has more time for more information, whether maybe he rather have Jalen Hurts or something else. But do keep an eye out because you never know if Jalen Hurts is going to play or not. And we'll know more about Michael Carter's situation as well, and Darnell Mooney, because who knows, maybe by the time it comes, he might have COVID too, right? So we got to watch out for that, because if Allen Robinson got it and a few others Bears got it, he could test positive, right? So you never know. It's always something to watch out for this year, especially now with the Omicron variant. So want to go for that last question, or do you want to save it for Sunday?
Yeah, no, I'll go for this question because it's kind of a two-parter. So the first one is Duke Johnson or Malcolm Brown, and I do want to kind of bring up these two names because both of them have a chance of leading the Miami backfield this week. So I think both of them could be viable, or one of them is going to explode. We saw Duke Johnson is kind of more of your pass catcher, and we saw Myles Gaskin had a lot of success. The reason I'm mentioning this is because Myles Gaskin, Salvon Ahmed, they're both out with COVID. So I do expect one of these or both of these running backs to be quite good. I believe this is a full PPR league, so I do lean Duke Johnson there between those two running backs. But again, I would wait for reports, see who they expect to handle the workload, and then go from there. The second part is Jared Cook or Pat Freiermuth, and to me it's Pat Freiermuth, although Jared Cook does play tonight, that guaranteed play, not on the COVID list. I can see why you'd want to play Jared Cook, but with their three studs in Austin Eckler, Mike Williams, and Keenan Allen playing tonight, it kind of puts Jared Cook as the fourth option. And I know Pat Freiermuth is kind of the same thing, but he's had a nose for the end zone, and when it comes to tight end, it's touchdown or bust. So I'd rather have Pat Freiermuth.
Yeah, when it comes to the tight ends, yeah, I'd go Pat Freiermuth. Not that Jared couldn't have a good game, but for the same reasons, there's a few more wide receivers on that end that you don't know who he's going to throw to. Where Pat Freiermuth, Big Ben seems to like him and keeps throwing him when he's the big man in the end zone. So that's the only reason I kind of lean that way. And it's not like the Titans defense is amazing or nothing like that. So where the Chiefs defense, they have, gotten a little bit better recently. Who knows if that holds up in tonight's game. And the only nice thing is that, of course, at least you don't have to worry. Like Steelers tend to be one right now that don't have the COVID all over the team. If that was the case, then I would lean towards Jared Cook, and that goes for almost anyone, right? Is when you have a rampant team of COVID, I would pick the other team if it's the earlier game. When it comes to Duke Johnson and Malcolm Brown, I'm not sure where I have Duke. I think I have him around 77, and Malcolm Brown I have at 66. So I would lean slightly towards Malcolm Brown, but honestly, it sucks that you don't have any better options. They're not players I really want to play. I mean, if you can flex someone else in there, I would, but it's hard to say who you would rather have this week, really. Probably Malcolm Brown because he knows he's been with the team longer, but
it'd be his first game since week 7 coming off the injury too, so that's definitely interesting too. Hasn't played a whole lot of football recently, so
yeah, that's a tough one. I would lean Malcolm Brown, but just plug your nose and hope for the best that one of them finds the end zone. Because other than that, I can't see either one having a big game. Yeah. Sorry about that, Jared Hill, but ugh, it's not a very fun question to answer. Maybe we'll look
No.
back on Sunday and we'll have more information. Maybe we'll revisit that if we hear new information.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
Tune in on Sunday, and just to end this podcast, I have a couple sneaky slash speculative ads or pickups if they're on your waivers. So Ronald Jones, so Gio Bernard is on IR, likely going to miss the rest of the regular season, at least the fantasy playoffs. And then all of a sudden, Leonard Fournette was on was had a limited practice today. He's kind of banged up and bruised up. So if Leonard Fournette they decide to sit him this week, I mean, Ronald Jones is likely to see 20 plus touches. I know it's against a tough Saints defense, especially run defense. But again, how many running backs this week can you almost guarantee 20 plus touches? So I like Ronald Jones just end of the bench, just in case. And if Leonard Fournette's healthy, you can drop Ronald Jones and pick somebody else up or whatever it may be, or even hold him in case Leonard Fournette gets hurt this week. D'Ernest Johnson is the other one. Derek brought him up earlier, where Cleveland's likely going to run a lot. The Raiders are giving the second most points to the running back. He's going to spell Nick Chubb at times with Kareem Hunt out this week. So D'Ernest Johnson could be a good flex play. And then again, with so many COVID cases being going around that Cleveland Browns room, what happens if we wake up Sunday morning and Nick Chubb happens to have contracted the virus, and then D'Ernest Johnson is the only running back there? So he has tremendous upside, and in the playoffs, if you want to win in the playoffs, you need that upside. Ramondre Stevenson, he's owned in 43% of ESPN leagues. Damian Harris is still on the injury report with the hamstring, even coming off of the bye. So Ramondre Stevenson, if he happens to get that entire backfield, it's kind of the same thing. Tremendous upside there. Gabriel Davis is only owned in 9.1% of ESPN leagues. With the Bills looking to make a playoff push here and needing to win some games and getting that offensive fire in. Again, Josh Allen kind of has that foot injury, so he might not be running so much, which might lean to 5-6 more pass attempts. And then Emmanuel Sanders being out this week, Gabriel Davis scoring touchdowns in back-to-back weeks. He could have another good week. And if you need that wide receiver 3 on your team, I think he's a good option. David Johnson, Rex Burkhead's out. David Johnson has been pretty good as a PPR option when Rex Burkhead has missed games. So I think David Johnson could be a very good option this week in PPR leagues. And then my last one is Kene Nwangu. The reason I bring him up is Alexander Madison is missing this week's game with COVID. Who would have been in those same meeting rooms? Dalvin Cook would have been in those meeting rooms. So if something happens that Dalvin Cook comes up having COVID, Kene Nwangu, who has tremendous speed, tremendous athleticism, already has 2 huge punt returns, one of them a 99-yarder, which we don't see too often. So he's somebody that only needs 1 touch to break away for a touchdown. So he's a guy I would add at the end of my bench in deeper leagues if you need kind of that high upside running back option.
Yeah, no, sounds good. So yeah, just one last reminder: make sure you pay attention that they're Saturday day games. So watch out to maybe make sure that they're in your lineup and not in your flex as well if you are. And watch out for, of course, COVID all throughout the week because it's rampant throughout many teams. Yeah, so that wraps up today's podcast. Don't forget we'll be back on Sunday morning. Don't forget to click that like button and subscribe on YouTube. Also, you can follow us on Twitter at BoudreauxBrosFF, at Marcel_BFF, and at Derek_BFF. Marcel is, of course, the most lively one there, but if you do send me any DMs, I will answer them or any tweets. Please don't hesitate to reach out and ask for any other questions about rankings, start, sit, or trades. Thanks, and see you guys next time.
Thank you. See you all.